Hi, today we're going to be looking at an amplifier instead of a bass. This is the Trace Elliot Elf. Nice compact head that can fit in your pocket just about. Trace Elliot is a brand that was famous through the 80s and into the 90s. It had a very definite sound. It was made in England. A lot of English bands used the sound. John Entwistle and Doug Wimbish. John Entwistle of The Who, of course, and Doug Wimbish of Living Colour were two of the biggest users of the Trace Elliot sound. The brand has gone through a couple ups and downs. Mark Goodday was the person who founded it. I'm not sure how he ended up leaving the company. He went on to found Ashdown and took John Entwistle with him. But Trace Elliot, the name was end up being purchased by Gibson, who did some interesting things with it, like they did with a lot of brands they purchased, and ultimately ended up being purchased by Peavey. Peavey back in the 2000s came out with a line of heavy amps that were similar and true in nature to the original Trace Elliots. The Trace Elliots were known for being louder than their rated wattage, and that has a lot to do with their voicing, and having graphic equalizers, built-in compression, a lot of times with split amp, with biamps and dual amplifiers. So a lot of high-end type of accoutrements. Then it went away again for a while, and then Peavey a couple years ago came out with the Elf series. And the Elf series consists of the head, a 2x8 cabinet, a 1x10 cabinet, and at some point they're going to be releasing a 1x8 combo and a 1x10 combo. They've been announced. I haven't seen them out in the wild yet. I have no idea if they're ever coming out. Peavey's been doing some weird things lately, but we'll worry about that later. We're talking about what we have now. So I've been gigging. This is going to be a review and also a real-world report. I've been gigging with Trace Elliot Elf for about 2 years or so now. It's been my main rig. I used to have the 110s. I'll talk about the 110s. I don't have one here with me now. I did sell them off, even though I knew I was going to be making this video, but whatever. I can give you the rundown on what the 110 cab is like. But first, let's start with the head. And pretty straightforward. Nice low profile. You have your input control, their input jack, I should say, and your gain control. Which is kind of where the magic happens for this head. Not only as you turn up the knob does the gain increase, but also it adds a bit of compression that's meant to emulate what a tube amp sounds like. So you get a bit of sagginess and whatnot to the sound, which is pretty pleasing. All the way up, the drive is just like over the moon. Craziness on that. And then, of course, you have your EQ section. You have your bass, which is centered at 80 hertz, your mids at 400 hertz, and your treble at 4.2. And then, of course, your master volume. And here's a headphone out to make it nice and easy. The back, stone simple. You have a post EQ DI. You have a 1/4 inch speaker jack, which 200 watts, that's typically what you want, but this is a bridged power amp module inside, so you have to be really careful not to ground out the 1/4, so don't pull the plug out ever when this is on, because you could blow up the amp. So that's why a lot of amps with that style design have a speak-on, but maybe the speak-on jack wouldn't fit, I don't know. Then, of course, your power, and then your mains. So, pretty straightforward. And up on top here, there's a little vent for a fan, which, yeah, you can hear the fan, but I mean, it's nothing that's obtrusive. This weighs around 2 pounds, supposedly. It feels heavier because it's very well built and substantial. It's all steel, except for the little plastic front plate here. Everything else is metal. So, nice and hefty. 200 watts output at 4 ohms, and I think around 130 or so at 8 ohms. There you go. That's the Elf head. Yeah, let's talk about the speaker cab quick. This is, you can see I have two here. The other one's cut off a little, but trust me, there's two. This is a 2x8 cabinet. These are Phytol design, I think I'm saying that right. 8-inch drivers in a front ported cabinet. It weighs about 27 pounds. Very nice, efficient design. Gives you a very nice, clear sound. A very true sound. They are rated at 400 watts and all day long, and they can handle it. These can take just about anything you can throw at it, these cabinets, as opposed to the 110, which I will talk about in a little bit. But let's move on. So, we got our bass plugged in, and let's get started. So, now, interesting thing about the DI is it is post EQ but pre-master volume. So the signal you send to the board is going to be independent of the volume and your amp. Pretty handy when you're recording, or going live, I should say. Working front of house gets the sound. They can control the volume up and down. Your stage volume won't affect what goes out to the board. So, helpful tip there. Going to be a little trickier, but you have to be careful then, because the amount of gain that you put in is really going to affect what the signal is going to the board. And there's no step down or anything on here, so they're really going to have to pay attention. And as you increase the gain, you can get more of a signal. And I'm going to show you one of the. Hopefully, I've got the level set properly on the recording device here to show you. But anyways, so let's just bring the gain up a little bit here. We're going on the 10 o'clock. Sorry. So the bass is set for passive control. Both pickups on all the way, tone up all the way. And this is the signal from the microphone that you were getting. I'm primarily going to be going with the sound for the mic, because that's how you get the sound, but I will also be at times showing you what the direct signal sounds like. So right now, this will be the direct signal. So that was a direct signal, and here is the signal through the speakers. All right, you can hear it's not very colored. It's pretty straightforward, it seems there, the tone. Now as we crank up the gain, we'll put it up here. Might be able to hear a little bit of hiss, but here is the sound direct. And here is the sound from the speakers. Nice and punchy. You notice a little more punchiness coming through here as we bring the gain up. The bass, let's boost up the bass a little here along with the gain up. Oops. So that's the 80 hertz boots going right there. Now let's hear the sound through the speakers. And let's cut it. Bass cut all the way. And for fun, we'll do the boost up all the way. I play that through the speakers, you feel the air going. Alright. So decent range of control, the mid. That's for the direct. Here's the speaker. Hertz, pretty usable sound. Let's cut that. Direct. speaker. And as you hit the fret, you hear the clank there when I missed the fret. Alright, now, here's the treble. Up all the way, 4,200 hertz. Direct, and now through the speaker. Nice and bright, but not too glassy or shrill. And direct with the treble rolled off. Pretty usable sound, and here it is the speaker through the microphone, the speakers. The treble rolled off. Alright, so center arrow, the EQs. Let's drive the gain up. Now what I found useful and have a pretty usable rock sound is I would crank the gain up really high. You see where it is up here. Now, you might have heard that little whistle there. It's just before it goes into overdrive craziness sound. So here's direct. And here's through the speaker. Let me pull the main down a little. OB. Alright, so it's got a nice, slightly hairy, not quite totally overdriven sound, but like I said, really kind of emulates the response you get from a tube amp. That's the whole idea there. You hear that punch with the double stops there through the speaker. That was through the speaker. Let us go direct with the double stops. What the hell was I editing this? Alright. Now, let's go to Happy Fun Zone. Let's crank the gain all the way. And this is going to be direct. Alright, that was direct, the gain cranked all the way. Now, notice I had the master down here. We'll pull it up a little. You can already hear the feedback. Gain up all the way, the master barely cranked, going through the 2x8, 130 watts. Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit here. Voicings. Amp voicings make all the difference in the world. The wattage helps to a certain extent, but wattage is wattage, and wattage just talks about what the thermal power is coming from the amplifier to the speakers. It doesn't truly relate what the volume of a given amplifier is going to be. So, you know, when someone says, oh, that can't be 200 watts because it's so quiet, or 200 Trace Elliot watts, those are louder. It's not the wattage that's the difference. It's the voicing and of the preamplifier that causes you to perceive the volume a little bit different. So that is that works. Now I had mentioned, so just keep that in mind. So I mean, you can do a lot of damage with this amp and one of these cabs. You can do a ton of damage with this amp and two of these cabs. So when it comes down to gigging, you know, that's one of the most popular things on the internet is, you know, someone, oh, you need at least this many watts or whatever. Well, there's no real hard and fast rule. As I mentioned, the watts doesn't really, it can be a rule of thumb, but it's not across the board. So don't fall into the trap of, I need this many watts. It's a lot of work. You may have to try out a lot of amplifiers before you find out what one will work for you. But that's what makes it fun, right? So, as I said, for the better part of the last 2 years, this has been my main amp. My main gig is an acoustic trio. It's acoustic guitar, drums, and bass. The vocals and acoustic guitar go through a Bose system, a compact system. I forget the exact S1 I want to say, but so that it actually puts out a decent amount of sound. So I don't have a whole lot to compete with, so I don't need a huge ton of power. If I was playing death metal, I definitely wouldn't be using this rig. But that being said, and then a lot of smaller bar gigs and all that. We're playing smaller rooms. You don't need stadium bass. You just need reinforcement and the bass to be heard. You're not going to be rearranging people's bowels with this setup. That's not the idea of it. But this is a good, solid working man's bass rig. Now, as I mentioned, the majority of the time I was gigging, I was utilizing this with the 110. And I did recently sell the 110s, and why did I? The 110 is an incredible cabinet in a few ways, and there are two things that, for my purposes, make it detrimental, but for you, might not. Now, the 110 weighs about 16 pounds. So this weighs 1.6 pounds, 16 pounds. Less than 20 pounds, you got a 130 watt rig. Big deal, I got combos like that. Yeah, but these are separates, so flexibility, right? But the thing, it's a 200 watt rated cab, and it has a bass light, Eminence bass light type speaker in it. And what I want to tell you is that, yeah, it's not a conservative rating, 200 watts. It's a pretty accurate rating. I had the misfortune of accidentally blowing up one of my 110s when I had my Mini Max amplifier, which is 350 watts at 8 ohms, plugged into it and put a bass on, and I guess I might have had the EQ up too high, and it overloaded the speaker almost instantly. So you got to be really careful with that cab. And it probably doesn't pair well with other heads, as opposed to the 2.8, which pairs well with almost any other head. But the 110 is probably perfectly matched for the Elf. And why? Because of how the cab is voiced. What's that word again? Voicing. So even though it's a little 10-inch speaker, it has an angled baffled, so it actually points up to you, and it's rear ported. It's designed in such a way to enhance the lower mid frequencies, so you get a big bump low down, and the tip right around where you would consider it to be boomy, and that's why I had to kind of part ways with it. So as I mentioned, the bass frequency here is centered at 80 hertz. I don't know what the cab was tuned at, but I'm gonna guess it was probably somewhere in the 100 to 250 hertz area that the bump is in. So what that means is you're not going to get rid of that sound with an 80 and a 400 hertz. So it's really hard to get the boominess out. So to give an example, this summer I played an outdoor gig at a restaurant, and I used my 110 and the Elf, playing my Jack Cassidy. And it sounded great because it gives the illusion of being even louder because of the frequencies that are being put out. So it sounds like a big bass cab when it's really not. It's just the low mids it's putting out. And it carried well outside, and everyone could hear the bass well, and it worked great. The next night we played at a campground, and we had to set up in a pavilion with a concrete floor and a peaked roof, and we set up inside, and we faced out to the people who sat in the field due to COVID. Everyone had to be outside, and just the nature of the pavilion just emphasized all the bass frequency, and there was this boom I could not get rid of. I had rolling the bass off, but it was just there. It was just so inherent in the voicing of the cabinet. So the 2 weeks, actually next week, we played that gig, and I brought this cab, and there was the boom wasn't there. So just something to keep in mind. You may find that to be, for your sound, the perfect combination. The Trace Elliot Elf and the 110 cab. And two of those together, I mean, if you're playing classic rock in a small bar, those 210s and this Trace Elliot Elf head, you're going to get a great usable sound. People are going to love it. They'll be amazed that it's so tiny and what it's coming out of, but very workable. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not one to tell you what can work on a gig because everyone's gig is unique. But I can tell you, like I said, from my experience with it. So the 110, it's just crazy because it's small, compact, easy to move. It just has such a baked-in sound that if that sound works for you, that's going to be great. And if it doesn't work for you, and again, like I said, you really only want to use it with low-powered heads. So it's really matched well to the Elf. That's probably the best components. I'm amazed, if you think about it, that they've come out with this cabinet because it's much more of a professional and higher end type cabinet. I think hopefully you could tell there that it's a lot more clearer and evenly spaced. You could actually combine the Elf with the 2.8 and the 110. I'd put the 110 on the bottom and have the 2.8 up, and you get it. It worked very well. I had done that a few times, and either a happy accident or Trace Elliot designed it that way. But yeah, so there you go. So that's the rundown on the Trace Elliot Elf and the 2x8 cabinet. The prices on these are all over the place right now. I don't know if they're being discontinued or whatnot. These used to go for around $299. I saw the price bump up to around almost $350, and I've seen them going now for like $275 new. So look around. You can probably get a great deal on one brand new around $275 if you look. These cabs go for $500. You may be able to find deals on these as well. So keep your eyes peeled for sales and deals. If you can get this for a discount, it's well worth it. This is an incredibly pro cab. I mean, the one drawback is the connectors on the very bottom, so it can be tricky. But that is the Trace Elliot Elf setup. All right. So, to mix things up a little, we're going to play the Mesa WD-800. I'm going to center my EQs here. And we're going to play it through the 2x8 cab. So, now the Mesa has a ohm setting. I have it set to 2 ohm switch, which means it's putting out about 300 watts going into the cabinet here. So that's going for as clean a sound as possible. Not bad. So, like I said, this cabinet all day long can handle just about anything you throw at it. So, very versatile and highly recommended. Alright, now I am going to be playing the Elf down here. We're going through the AER Cab 1, which is an older cab design. It's a 210 with an 8-inch Wizzy speaker. The 210s are mounted opposed to each other. So you can only see the 110 on the bottom, which I'm not moving the camera, trust me. The 110 and then the 8. So it's kind of like, the isobaric type chamber here. So there's different sounds. It's a very clean sounding cabinet. It doesn't have, it's pretty neutral voiced, I think. So let's see, what does it sound like? And it's a 4 ohm cab, so we're going to have 200 watts of the Elf going in to the AER cab. I think I'm redlining this. This is only going right through the microphone, not through the direct or anything. So you're getting the sound, the room sound of the cab. EQs are all straight up and down. Master volume's at noon, and the gain is at 1 o'clock. So there you go. That's your sound of the Trace Elliot Elf going through a 4 ohm cabinet. So you tell me, can you gig with this 200 watt head? Maybe you can. I don't know. But check it out. So to sum up, the Trace Elliot Elf. Can you gig it? I think you can. Up to you to decide. But, as far as I'm concerned, this is a nice 200 watt powerhouse. Can fit into your pant pocket if you got big enough pockets. Definitely into your gig bag pocket. Awesome to have as a backup amp. Great to use as a main amp. Like I said, it's my main gigging amp for almost 2 years. Hard to go wrong. And you can find them out there for like $275 if you look. So any other questions? Feel free to throw them down in the comments. Ask away. Like I said, I've had 2 years experience on this. I can give you a lot of real world reports. But I tell you, if you want a good old classic style sound, the Elf and the 110 cabinets, that'll bring it to you. If you need a more flexible sound, myself, I play in multiple different bands and I need different tones and the like, then the 2.8 works a lot better for me. So that's what works for me. What works for you, I don't know. But if you get a chance to check out an Elf, do it. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Check out my playlist of bass reviews and let me know what you think. Peace out.